Hey, I'm Alex,
And I'm Brandon.
and welcome to Living Electric.
We're both content creators and electric vehicle enthusiasts.
And through this podcast, we hope to share our experience with owning electric vehicles and help you join the electric life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living Electric. We are on episode 7 of season 3, and this season has just gone by super quickly. It's really hard to believe that we're coming up on season 4, and we've had a lot of exciting topics and guests. And today we are joined by Laycee of Miss GoElectric. Welcome, Laycee.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Oh, we're excited to have you here. Just to give a quick background, and Laycee, you can, if I miss anything, please let me know. Laycee has extensive automotive experience with working with such companies as McLaren and Karma Automotive. I also was looking at your LinkedIn profile, which I mentioned. If you get a bunch of notifications, that was me. I've seen that you've had a lot of experience being like product reps for a lot of different companies, and you currently are the host of Miss GoElectric.
Yes. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background on me, I've been in the automotive business for about 10 years plus. And with my role, typically what I do is whenever a new car company or a legacy maker comes out with a new product, then they need people on the ground educating them about the new vehicle that's coming out, whether that's at an event or an auto show. I've done a lot of dealer training as well. So I'll go into the dealers and educate them on the product and the demographic and where it stands, and on some industry information as well. So my experience is, focused primarily on educating consumers, dealer staff, OEM staff on new product launches.
That's awesome. How long have you been doing that? Like in terms of like the education side?
Yeah, so right when I got into the automotive business, so it's a total of like just over 10 years. And I started initially with just one client. So I worked with Lincoln for about 7+ years. And then as I was working with Lincoln, my business is very strange. Like we're all contractors. So I've to be honest, I've never had a full-time job of like an actual employee. I've always just been a contractor. So during my time with Lincoln, I slowly got more into the experiential side where I would do test drive events and host people in the car. So I'd be in the right seat and I'd be instructing them on, what route to take, and also in the process telling them everything that they need to know about the car. And while they're experiencing the driving dynamics, explain exactly what they're feeling and why. And that kind of led me into working with other brands, because when you're in the luxury sector, that is a specific criteria when you're dealing with that demographic that the other brands kind of glom onto, and they really want to focus on having people that have an expertise not only in that product but also on the hospitality side of things. So from there, I actually started working with some of the more higher end supercar brands like McLaren and Rolls-Royce, and specifically over the last 5 years I started actually working with BMW, and once I drove the i3, I was like, holy moly, this thing is super fun, very unexpected. I don't know about the looks of it, but once I got in it, I was sold. So
Yeah, I love the panda looks, the white and the black one.
Yeah.
I always call that the panda.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I launched the i3, and after that, I was like, man, I need to focus on, educating solely more on the EV side of things. And so like right before the pandemic hit, I launched the Polestar 2. So in 2019, I took that all around the US, Canada, and parts of Europe as a static vehicle to educate people on that upcoming product. And then, the last event I had worked was CES in 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, well, now everything I do is in person with mass amounts of people. So
Yeah.
how am I gonna deal with this? And slowly develop the idea of the Miss GoElectric brand. So I said, you know what, there are a lot of people doing this, but there aren't a lot of females doing it that have specifically automotive experience like I do. So I started my channel just over a year ago, and it's been going really well. And Yeah, I mean, I just got finished filming, a month and a half ago, the Charge Across America TV EV rally that's going to premiere on NBC Sports on December 21st. And I'm pretty happy that within that period of time, I'm able to hop on a TV show.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna.
Unexpected.
I was going to ask with your YouTube channel, it blew my mind with like that out of spec EV media event, like talking to people who I always thought like had channels for years. And a lot of people who I've talked to started them in, spring of 2020. And It's incredible how much growth you guys have seen, especially with Miss GoElectric. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it just makes me excited because like you guys have been doing it for a while, and there needs to be way more diverse backgrounds that are providing information on the usability factor and how it really is, like with your channel, like living every day with an EV, because it's a different lifestyle and people are scared of it, but we need to make sure that we're giving them enough information to give them confidence to make the switch.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there going back to your car days, is there a favorite car that was the most fun to sit in the passenger seat with and like have people experience for the first time? Or was it an EV and that's kind of what got you into what you're doing now?
I mean, it was really fun doing the i3 launch. But I mean, I've worked with so many different brands, and I still do. So that's what I do full time. Miss GoElectric, I'm trying to make it more full time than it is. But yeah, so gosh, that's a tough question. What is my favorite? I don't know. Like, I own a Tesla Model S, so that's kind of my it's always fun to take people that have never experienced an EV in that because they're like, wait a second.
That's a good starter.
This is what it's about. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when I'm not working, actually, it's hard to contain myself. I like to just get people excited about it. So I take people for rides in that. And when I put my friends in there for the first time, they're like, okay, I get it. Yeah. That's very rewarding.
That's a common theme we've heard talking to a lot of people. It's like you can have somebody that is like the biggest EV hater, and then as soon as they get in the car, like their whole perspective changes. And it's like crazy how important that is for driving adoption and making people understand what it's really like. It's
so true.
More butts and seats, as they say.
Yeah.
Butts and seats. That's exactly what I do for a living, butts and seats.
So, Laycee, I wanted to ask you, so it's interesting that you have all this automotive experience for the past 10 years. Have you always been into cars ever your entire life?
No, so that's kind of the interesting thing is that, I went to school to be a sports reporter, and I did that actually for a year out of school. And I loved that. I still love watching sports and being involved in that community. But ultimately, I graduated with quite a bit of student loan debt, as I'm sure everyone can relate to for the most part.
Yeah. And not looking forward to January.
Right? And so I was like, you know what? I got to do something, because working in a really small market, long hours, where it transitioned from when I initially started getting into the business and actually going out and getting a job, is you became like a one-man show. Whereas before in TV, you'd have a separate editor, you'd have a separate cameraman, you'd have a separate, everything. And you would write your scripts and your packages, and that would be what you would focus on. But this was kind of like you had put in a lot more work for less money and a lot more time. And although I love it very much, I need to do something to supplement so I can pay for my student loans. So, and just living in general. So I had a girlfriend who was on a very similar path as I was in broadcasting. And she was like, hey, you know what? I'm having the same problem, but I actually just auditioned for this agency, which supplies talent for auto shows. So, I think I'm going to do it, and it sounds great. So maybe you should try that out. And so I did. I auditioned for one of the agencies, and that's how I got into the automotive business. And they trained me up on some of the basics of automotive and obviously the product line initially. But then I fell in love, and as reporter does, dives deep in research and figuring out what is this all about, and just became obsessed. So yeah, since then, my experience isn't ultimately that long in comparison to a lot of other people in the business being in automotive, but now I'm in pretty deep.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always interesting because like some of the people that we've had on their show, they've either been enthusiasts their entire lives or they're just getting into it, which is really cool. They're not to turn it to me. Fun fact, I actually used to hate cars when I was younger, and
Really?
now and I would say maybe until like 2009, that's when I started getting into cars. So it's kind of interesting. I feel like you're either born into it or you grow into it.
Well, it's so funny because I live in the Metro Detroit area and everyone is in the car business here. So like, it was like, people were like, oh, of course, you're from Detroit area. You are into cars. And I was like, I guess now I am, I wasn't before, but I have so many relatives and everybody that's either a supplier or works for, corporate or whatever. And so now it's a natural fit, but I felt like a fish out of water at first.
What's the response like in the Detroit area compared to maybe other places you visited with around EVs? Are they pretty responsive to it? Because the reality is that's kind of the direction the industry is going. But
yes, and to your point, it's obvious to us and we see it, but the people in like the legacy automakers and the brands that have been around forever that have been turning out combustion engines, it's not as obvious.
Wow.
And they have a lot of myths that they continue to project, unfortunately. So there's a lot of work to be done there. In Michigan, it's an interesting mix, though, I would say, because my first video on my channel was about this, but the automakers, specifically with direct sales, are trying to block that out in my state. And right now it's kind of at a standstill, that it's on pause, but a bill passed actually in the House in the state of Michigan, where essentially it would prevent anybody else other than Tesla, because they fought and took it all the way to our Supreme Court in order to have the ability to sell here. And they're trying to close that loophole, which is unfortunate. And, a lot of people will come at me and say, well, dealerships, we need dealerships. I'm not saying close down the dealerships. I'm saying I am pro consumer choice. Mm-hmm. Everyone should have the ability to be able to choose whichever model. It shouldn't be forced through a third party dealer. And that's just my opinion, but the state of Michigan, there are quite a few specifically EV makers. Rivian has an office here, a pretty big one in Plymouth, that they want to be able to sell their cars to their employees and the other people in the state. And so I really believe in that, and I try to fight for that. But it's really tough because the OEMs have a big stronghold, and actually the dealer groups have an even bigger stronghold. So they're really trying to do what they can to prevent that from accelerating. And so it's kind of tough. We're in this weird limbo right now, but then at the same time, we have a lot of policy taking place that is being infused into legislation that is promoting electric vehicles. And we have a specific office in our state that is dedicated to, transitioning to electrification. So it's kind of a push and pull, and I think it's kind of people pleasing on both sides, but it is a very, very, very slow transition. We do not have a lot of infrastructure, especially in the northern part of the state, which is significant for us because a lot of people in the state of Michigan, I'm sure you guys are familiar being, in the state south of me, having to go up north. Like people go up north here, and we need charging infrastructure to be able to support that lifestyle, because everyone in our state does that. They have like a small little cottage and up north where they can enjoy the summers and stuff, and even the winter with snowmobiling and everything. And so there's a lot of work to be done, especially on the infrastructure side, to support that lifestyle. Slowly but surely, at a snail's pace, we're getting there.
Yeah. It's interesting when where the focus goes a lot of the times with charging, because we always focus on, oh, well, all the people are right here, we got to put all the charging right here. But if most of the people are living there, they're typically just charging at home. Like, we really do need better infrastructure in these small little rural towns that are
Exactly.
kind of the connectors, honestly, to the rest of the state or other parts of the country. So
Exactly.
it's got to be a huge push. Like, it's been encouraging in Ohio, because Columbus is just so good for charging. Like, I can't go out and not see a charger now, which is incredible. Like, it wasn't even like that 2 years ago. But anytime I venture outside of the metro area, it's like, it's very hit or miss. Like, I have a hard time even finding somewhere to go. So
Yeah.
And Alex, Cleveland, the infrastructure here is not very good.
Yeah.
I think we have less than 10 fast chargers in like a 50-mile radius around Cleveland, and pretty much there's like level 2 spotted all over. And it's getting better, but it's definitely nowhere what it's like in, Detroit or Columbus. Like, it needs to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest
Agreed.
question you get from people that are experiencing EVs, is around charging, or is it something else?
Yeah, people are concerned with range anxiety, so charging is the huge factor. They want something that can go enough range for, of course, their daily commute, but it's always going to prevent somebody, because if they take a road trip just once out of 5 years,
Yep.
they don't care. They want to have the capability to do that, and they should. So yeah, it is the biggest question is always around charging. Well, how do I charge it, and like where are these charging? And that's the other thing, people don't realize there are a lot of charging stations usually in the areas that I'm going, because it's usually big metro areas where there are a lot of people. And when you pull up a map of, like, say on PlugShare or ChargeWay, you're like, look at all this stuff. You don't even realize what's around you.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I wanted to circle back to Charge Across America. I'm super excited to watch that on Tuesday, but I'm sure there are some things you can say right now versus what we'll see on Tuesday. With traveling across the country, how was the infrastructure in like some of more of the rural areas that you've experienced?
Yeah, so to be fair, I've done a lot of EV road tripping in my car, but this was a whole different experience because I'd never done an EV road trip in a CCS vehicle. And so my co-driver Ryan offered up his Mustang Mach-E, which is what we took on the trip from New York to LA. Now, to be fair, we all made the trip. We got it done, and it was a success from that standpoint. But we did have a lot less charging infrastructure available to choose from in the middle of the country. And I will say, luckily, Electrify America has a whole string that goes across the country that we were able to, charge on. But, some of the pockets were like over or about 100 miles in between those charging stations. So it's like you needed to stop there in order to get going. And if you have any kind of issue with a charging station, that can cause, a big problem for people who are road tripping and kind of strand them for hours if it's not, up to snuff. So, we had an experience specifically in the middle of the country that was really hard because there was a whole bank of chargers that, weren't working as they should. We didn't know why. We called the customer service and they couldn't really understand what was happening or why either. But ultimately, that particular one stop was really tough for all of the teams because that was the only place to charge, fast. Because that's the other thing, though, is to be clear, what we were doing was slightly impractical because we weren't allowed to charge at hotels overnight. We were only allowed to charge on the clock. So we would punch in every morning and then punch out and no charging after that. You had to make sure that you had enough charge for whatever station you were going to be going to next in the morning, whatever was in the area. Yeah. So most people would just, charge overnight at a hotel. That makes the experience really, really easy because you don't even have to worry about a full fill up.
Yeah.
the next morning.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was tough in the rural areas, but we all did it, and we made it.
You're here.
Important
And that's what
part.
matters.
Yeah. So it is doable. I mean, there needs to be work definitely with the maintenance side of things on charging infrastructure. And I don't know if it's because of certain vendors or, specifically because these charging networks purchase these units from different companies, whether it's ABB or Signet or, whatnot. So there needs to be definitely more focus on maintaining the network in a timely manner. Some stations we would pull up to, and there was no one fixing them. They were just offline, and the station was full of people. So you had to wait and get a charge after someone left. So I think, as mass adoption comes, we need to address these things now and focus on making it a non-issue for people, because they'll glom onto that one issue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. I feel like, the biggest argument is when combustion drivers go to a gas station, the majority of the time there is an uptime for gas pumps. I mean, from time to time, you'll see something out of order. And most of the time they get that resolved pretty quickly. But in terms of reliability and redundancy for EV stations, I 100% agree it needs to be improved. And
Well,
the
and I
nice
think-
thing... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the nice thing is that nothing's set in stone right now. There is a lot of opportunity to improve that. And I
sure.
really hope it does improve.
Yeah, and people are wondering why it isn't the same as, because you get annual inspections or whatnot at gas stations. But the uptime is so important for gas stations versus, electric vehicle stations, because the land that these charging stations and infrastructure companies are buying up, that's a significant value proposition that they just want to hold on to. They want to get it fast, and then they'll deal with whatever later. That's how they see it. Because especially right now with this infrastructure bill coming to light and a lot of federal money being available for the networks, that's what they want to do, is they want to get it, secure it, and then get as much as possible done just by getting the chargers out and not worry about, having to fix them immediately, because they just want to be able to get that real estate.
Yeah,
That's
an interesting perspective. I actually never thought of it that way.
I see that all the time. So my full-time job is with Green Lots. I don't know if we discussed that at the media summit, but that's like a constant point I try to get across to people when I'm working with them, because that's part of my job, is kind of advising people on like what's going to work best for charging, what power levels do you need, all that kind of stuff. And I constantly have to remind people, like, just plugs for the sake of plugs is not doing anybody any help. Like, it's really got to be implemented properly. We've got to make sure there's a support system in place, so if parts do fail, we've got a plan for that. We've got either backup chargers that we can swap out real quickly and get it back online, or we've got some kind of way to handle that stuff. And that's really where the engineer in me comes out, because having a single mode of failure, if one little thing goes wrong, the whole station's down, or somebody isn't able to charge, like that's gonna lead to an awful consumer experience, which just like hurts adoption, quite honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and not only that for the actual vehicle, but for the charging infrastructure. If someone has a consistent bad experience on Green Lots, then they're not going to come back to it. They're going to go to something else. So
you're exactly right. Yep.
Sorry, we can edit this part out. I just kind of drew a blank.
No worries.
Yeah, I think I need that coffee cup that you have.
Doing wonders.
Yeah. So to circle back to Charge Across America, Laycee, what can you provide some details to our listeners to what they can expect when it goes live? Because this episode will drop on Monday morning, so it'll be a day before.
Sure. Yeah. So what's interesting is that literally every day was so stressful, because just to give you guys a heads up, the vehicles that were involved, there were 2 Porsche Taycans.
Okay.
There was a Mustang Mach-E, a VW ID4, and a Polestar 2 initially. The Polestar 2 had some issues. They had to swap it out with an Audi e-tron. But we were up to some very stiff competition for the rally because I'm sure you guys know this, but the Porsche can pull 270 kilowatts on charging.
Yeah.
And it can hold more in the pack. So unfortunately, we knew we were at a disadvantage just based on the lineup of cars, which, I mean, the Porsche is like double the cost of, of the Mustang Mach-E. So if it can hold its own, that's a true bravo to that car for sure. But yeah, so we'll find out the results at the end of the 10-day race coming up here on Tuesday for the NBC Sports showing. But what was interesting is, in order to gain certain amount of points every single day, there were like a wide variety of options that you could choose to go and get points. So like, of course, every day, depending on when you would get in with the standings, you would get a certain amount of points, and it was a gradual lineup of points. So if I came in first place on one day, it was a 7-point advantage. Then 5 points if I got second place, and 3 for, and so on until it went all the way down to the 5 teams. And, every day was different because, one day you might win because you sacrificed the day before to wait and sit there and get a full charge, and then, have a full charge for the morning to be set up for success to win that day. So you might lose one day, but then you might win one day. So it was like a back and forth, and it was just chaotic because we needed to do everything to stay competitive when it came to strategy. And a lot of people, when initially they're thinking about, just the person that gets across there first is the winner based on that time. Well, that's not how it worked. It was, yes, you got points for that, but there was also an efficiency score. So if you paid attention to how we can only go 10% of the speed limit over. So, if I was going 50, I could only go 55, and they tracked it on these devices, this Cambridge telematics device, to make sure that we were staying within that range, and also tracking, hard braking and acceleration and things like that. So the efficiency score was important as well. And that was a good 10 points if you were on top for that, and a gradual down from there. So not only that, but then if you opted to get local food for the day twice during your punch-in, you would get points for that. They also introduced special addresses. So on a lot of the days, they would give us 2 addresses, the endpoint address and then the special address, which you could choose if it was on the route. Most people would opt to take it. But you also would have to think, well, what's my competition doing? Because if they're going to take it, then I might be able to leapfrog them and get the standing points instead, and, kind of win in that manner. So there was a lot of different ways that you could get points and get deductions. So it was stressful every day trying to come up with the plan. Like, I would sit there and I had my handy dandy notebook, as I called it, and I would write out all of our plans for the day to, like, this is the charging station that we're staying at, and we're only charging to this amount. And we would get to an extremely low state of charge because that's where you charge the fastest. So I think this is going to be great for people to watch because they are going to understand the concept of, where you can get the fastest charge and when it's not worth it to stay longer at a station and just move on and then get to the next one. So that was kind of our strategy every day, was to get down to the lowest possible state of charge that we could. Sometimes we roll in with 1 mile of range and then stay only to that amount till we got to the next charging station, and then, keep on keeping on. So, and it was stressful at times because there were things thrown at us that we didn't know was going to happen. Like, when we were driving through Colorado, closer to the end of the stretch, we encountered some incredible headwinds, and that zapped it took a lot of energy away from a lot of the teams. And actually, we only noticed that we were going to be, having to stop again only because we were so close to one of the Porsches. And we noticed they were slowing down significantly. We're like, what are they doing? This is crazy. What, like, I don't understand. And we're like, oh my gosh, this headwind is taking so much energy from them. They do not have enough to get to the next spot. So they had to stop again.
Wow.
Yeah, and specifically along that path, it was interesting because there were 3 different charging stops that you could opt for. And, you know, some people would use the Electrify America app only. Some people would use a combination of, you know, the others, you know, whether it's PlugShare or ChargeWay or whatever, to be able to find those other stations. And so the strategy of knowing which apps to use and which not to use, you know, could have put you in a bad position. And so we ended up, specifically that day, I had done some research and knew exactly where all the chargers were, and found that there was a brand new EV Go station that we could stop at that was a 350 kilowatt, which those are, you know, pretty rare. But the other team had stopped at a charge point that was only providing like, I want to say it was like 60 kilowatts or something like that, which was a significant difference. Yeah. And I'm like, I think they're going to the charge point. I think, you know, so it's like funny to see because Brian and I are like freaking out. And we're like, this could mean that we are put ourselves in a good position. But, you know, of course, something else has to happen in order to, there's so much drama. It was funny because I don't think that the production company knew what they were getting into when they got onto this, because they're like, oh yeah, we'll just, you know, be filming this, you know, fun thing that goes across the country. No big deal, whatever. But that literally every day there was some drama or some crazy thing that happened that was so unexpected that you know, it's going to make for not only a good show for the initial airing, because the one we're going to see on NBC Sports on December 21st is going to be about a 1-hour documentary style.
Okay.
And so they're going to have to cut out quite a bit in order to, you know, fit that time slot. But they're working on selling out an extended cut as a series to one of the streaming platforms because they just have so much footage.
Wow. Okay.
Going to be really, really entertaining. So I haven't seen the footage yet. I'm really excited to see it with everybody else. And it's airing at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific for the NBC Sports airing.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, it was funny. I was keeping up with you and Ryan through social media as you guys were doing this experience. And I mean, just to hear like the sheer, like, almost like competition game show aspect of it, I'm more excited for this now.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much they gamified it. That makes it a lot more interesting, I'm sure.
That's what I'm saying. It was like, it was wild, like every day. And it was funny because some of the special addresses, oh God, I hope they show some of the footage of one in particular. One of the special addresses was like a puzzle that is like the world's largest items in this one town. And so this one town just had like these massive like landmarks of like a giant rocking chair or a giant key. Like they had so many random things, and the interpretation, like you had to figure it out on to like what it was. And so because they just gave us a list of items, well, one of the teams interpreted it that they would just like go to someone's house and collect these things.
Oh my gosh.
And when you meet these people too, like the cast was just amazing. Like the contestants, they wanted a wide variety of people to be able to have people to relate to. I mean, like you can't have everyone that knows everything about electric cars doing this because, you know, people can't relate to that. They're going to be, they don't know anything about electric cars. And there are plenty of people like that. I've never experienced an EV or, you know, have quite a bit of experience with EV or have kind of a moderate view. So I think that's also going to be really awesome for the viewers because they'll be able to relate to one of the teams no matter what, because they were just a wide variety of experience. But if you were to meet this team that did the knocking on the door, oh God, you would be like, yeah, that's exactly what they would do. The dynamic between everyone was wonderful, and I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to do it. I got to thank Ryan because at the Kilowatts, he was the one that invited me to be his co-driver, and I'm just so grateful to have met all of them and, you know, become really great friends with him too.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was talking with it's Brandon Flash, right? Not Brendan Flash.
Oh yes.
I just say Brandon. I mean, as a
Okay.
Brandon, I just kind of like keep it generic.
You're Brandon too.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it was him I was talking to, but they were like, I really see that like EVs might like give new life to like the road trip culture in America, because now you're like, everybody's not like just trying to get wherever they're going the fastest. Like you can actually enjoy a road trip now, because you've got to stop and take a little break every once in a while to charge up your car. And there are like tons of cool stuff like that on the sides of roads that have like kind of been left there now because everybody's just like trying to go somewhere else. But now we're going to be stopping there and checking things out. So it'll be cool to see that firsthand on Tuesday night.
Yeah, agreed. I'm anxious to see it. It's going to be interesting how they cut it. I'm like, I hope I don't look too silly, but I've resigned it. I've resigned to it. So I'm like, okay, it is what it is. They're going to cut it the way they want to. So.
So on the topic of media events and like, you know, being doing things for the media, you know, a week and a half ago, we actually met in person at the Out of Spec EV Media Summit in Los Angeles. I wanted to ask you, out of that entire experience and like all the cars we got to like experience, did you have one that like really like piqued your interest or that was your favorite?
Yeah, so I spent actually a lot of time with the Audi because that, you know, I'm so used to being around luxury vehicles. I really wanted to see how that could stack up against what I'm used to. And I've worked with a lot of even supercar brands. So for me, with the price point of that vehicle, I really wanted to see how it really compared to a lot of vehicles that I've been in that price point. And so I actually spent the most time with that one so that I could shoot a video, a full encompassing video on that. And so I've actually been working on editing that over the last 5 days or so that I've gotten back to my house in order to get that out too. But yeah, that was the one I spent the most time with. But I took the VW ID4 to the Autopia 2099 event, which if you guys haven't heard of is like a classic EV conversion show, but they also had a lot of new stuff too. And they had motorcycles and, Nissan brought the Aria and they had a Formula E car there. And so they had a lot of really, really cool stuff there. But I drove the ID4 from our event to Autopia and then came back. And I was like, I did the review on my channel on the rear wheel drive first edition, and I liked that. But it was a big stark difference to me with the all-wheel drive and the extra power. I really enjoyed, that, and I enjoyed it on my initial review too. But I was really impressed with the all-wheel drive version, and that's what you have, right, Brandon?
Yeah, we have the first edition, rear-wheel drive, and Tyler and I really wanted to experience all-wheel drive, and the moment he punched it, we're like, we regret our purchase. Like, we should have held out. Because we had an all-wheel drive on reservation, and then the dealership by us had that first edition, so we ended up getting that. But, I mean, there's a stark difference between the rear-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive. I mean, they're both great cars, but there's so much more power in the other one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually was just talking to one of the contestants on the show. She was reaching out to me. She's like, I'm looking to buy an EV now, which I'm like, that's awesome.
Win.
And she actually wants to start an EV group in New Hampshire. So I'm like, this is so great. Yes. Like, so she's converted. Like by the end of it, it was hilarious because we were like, Ryan and I are like, you're all EV nerds now. Love it. And they're like, we are guilty as charged. So she actually reached out to me and was like, I'm looking for something in the $30,000 range. And I'm like, well, you're in New Hampshire. You're probably going to want all-wheel drive. And the best option is going to be the ID4. So I would definitely look into that. So that's one that I've already recommended to people quite a bit.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we love our ID4. I mean, that's the one car we recommend to a lot of people as well. And it's going to be interesting, with the Ioniq 5 pricing that they just announced, how that's going to compete with the, the ID4.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And a little bit faster charging. So I'm really excited to drive that. I think the embargo gets lifted today for a lot of the reviews. So
yeah. I've been keeping an eye out for Kyle from Out of Spec, his video.
Oh yeah.
Pretty excited about that.
Gonna be a good one.
Well, that's awesome that you got to experience the RS e-tron GT and the ID4. I know that this is probably going to be a silly question because there's such a big price difference and performance difference. Which out of those two would you say you would choose?
I mean, yeah, in my budget would be the ID4, so that's what I would go with. But I can see the value of people hopping in the Audi, and I haven't driven the Taycan yet, but from what I've heard from people that have driven both of those, they have said that there are different character, dynamics in each one of those cars. And really what I found in the Audi was specifically that it really is a GT. Like, it is a good daily driver option for people in that price range. The range is pretty decent because it's a fairly efficient car. It has a really nice air suspension, but it handles really well considering how heavy it is. And I felt like the steering was really loose, but other than that, I felt like it was a really great performing car. It's not, even though it is the RS, it wasn't as sporty as I was expecting, but it's a daily driver. So to me, I thought, it was a great car for, that type of vehicle, but it is very pricey.
Yeah.
It's very, very expensive.
Yeah, I would sell my house for that.
Yeah. I'd need to sell my house and my car.
Same here. Yeah. Well, Alex, I
was trying to think of any like content production questions, because you already kind of went through your story of how you got into that. What's been the biggest like learning experience going into content production, coming from like kind of a more traditional media background?
Yeah, well, so there was a lot of learning to do, because back when I was in it, when I graduated from college, even just the systems that I would use were drastically changed and like wildly different from what I was used to. So I had to completely learn. I used DaVinci, so I had to completely learn that system. And I'm still learning. Like, I feel like you can learn forever. Yeah, you can learn forever. Audio has been a significant learning curve as well, because it's so important to a production, and to have good, clean, non-peaking audio is essential, especially when you're doing interviews. And that's one thing I like to focus on doing more of, is talking to industry leaders and CEOs. I've had a few videos on my channel with people that are heads at companies, and talking about their perspective and what they're offering at their at their company. And when you do that, you really have to, consider audio in a new light. Because, for example, like I did a video with Electrify America back, at the beginning of the year. And when I went to their facility, I did not realize that I was going to have to take into account the charging stations have a specific wave signature that was messing with my audio. So when I came back, I was like, oh no, I'm so in trouble, because all this audio has like that noise in the background. Or something in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, whoa. Like actually it was like 4 different wavelengths that were in there. But luckily, DaVinci saved me. DaVinci saved me. It was able to like target those and completely wipe them out. So, just for instance, like you got to just take that into consideration with things like, that are putting off a signature that you're not familiar with or don't expect. So yeah, I mean, all of it is really a learning curve for me. And I'm still learning a lot, but I really enjoy it. The thing that I have the hardest time, putting a lot of consistent, like I can't spend a whole 10-hour day like editing, because it just drives me crazy. I love what some of the other channels do where they don't edit as much. I get it in my head that I have to have it look a certain way, and I'm particular. So I'm like, I got to cut it here. I got to do this and add all these graphics and transitions and all this stuff. So I need to be more efficient on the editing side of things. That's one thing that I'm like, ugh, editing's not my favorite, but hopefully one day my channel grows big enough, I can hire someone to, edit the most part of it.
Yeah.
I literally just told Tyler that same thing last night when we were out walking the dogs. I'm like, the goal for everyday EV is to get to that point where I can pay for an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, I will say that when it comes to like content production, it's always interesting to hear people's perspectives of how they're learning. And I think that's the most grounding aspect, is because I started with a webcam, and then like I slowly bought equipment and I started learning things.
Yeah.
But like, as Alex attests, and I tell him all the time, Alex is like the one that stepped up to send me things to help me. So like, and we go back and forth all the time. Like it's a learning opportunity for almost every aspect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was one thing I liked about the EV Media Summit, was to be able to talk to the other content creators to, hear exactly how they do things, or, oh, I use this and this is what you should, try or whatever. And so it was a really rewarding experience, not only because we got to get in those cars and make a lot of videos, but also just the people. I loved that part of it so much. And like finally meeting you in person, and Tyler and Alex, and yeah, so that was like the highlight of us being able to just chat with you guys for a long period of time.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was probably my main takeaway too, is just getting a chance to see how everybody operates, behind the camera. I think, Alex, we talked about that during a recap episode, is everybody has a different style, and that's what makes it so cool to like finally see. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
It's interesting how differently everybody does it, because some people are shooting on like just straight GoPros, people are using their phones, but like Kilowatts has a freaking
camera guy, yeah.
So
shout out to Ben.
Yeah, everybody's on different levels, but it's like you can still make good content with everything is the thing. Like it's really more about how you cut it together and how you create your story more than anything. So
yep, agreed.
Well, I know that we are coming up on 50 minutes of recording, which is hard to believe it's already been 50 minutes. Laycee, I have two final questions, unless, Alex, you have any other questions.
No, go for it.
Okay. So the first one, and I think I already know the answer to this just because of like all your efforts, but can you give us an example of how you're helping people live an electric life?
Yeah, I mean, so in my day job, that's essentially exactly what I do, is I educate people on, what they need to know, charging 101, not only just the product when I'm doing a product launch, about like what are the specs of this vehicle and what's its advantages, how can you stack it up against the competition, but explaining, because I live it every day. That's what's so valuable, is that people do not understand. They think I'm just saying things because this is the information that they provided me. It's like, no, I actually live the lifestyle, so I can communicate that. And like I said before, it's good to get even people in my car and, friends and, acquaintances to be able to experience it for the first time. Like, I feel like people more and more now are coming to me and asking, I think I'm ready to go electric. What should I do? And so I spend quite a bit of time also explaining, this is the vehicle I believe fits your lifestyle best. And this is why you should get this or that option instead of, going to a fully loaded version if it's not necessary for you. So there are a lot of little things in the background that I'm doing, but also with the content creation with Miss GoElectric, I want to be able to provide more insight on, EV 101, and on the product side, giving product reviews, but also giving a peek into, the eyes of companies by doing these interviews with the CEOs and stuff. So I think I kind of just live and breathe it.
So you're literally living electric.
I literally am living unless I'm sleeping, I'm living it all the time.
I think we might need to copyright our title.
And I love doing the road trips, especially because the road trips really show people that it's like, yeah, you can even do the thing that a lot of people expect you can't. Mm-hmm. So
that's awesome. Well, and I'm going to put you on the spot for this last question, okay? I've kind of been failing for episodes, but I try to do like a dad joke or like a bad pun at the end of each episode.
Okay,
so
great.
Do you have any electric car jokes or like anything that might be punny to finish the episode on?
Oh, gosh. Electric car jokes. No, I mean, always the one, because I used to work for BMW a lot, and this isn't specifically an electric car joke, but always would be like, what's the difference between a BMW driver and oh God, now I'm blanking on what it is. The pricks on the inside is the punchline, but but specifically, I don't know if I even have any electric car jokes. That's a good one. I got to work on that apparently.
Well, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
That's all right. We got to come up with one now.
Yes, yeah. We can edit that into, later in the episode.
We'll do a voiceover later. No, really appreciate you taking the time and being on this morning. Where can everybody find you, and how can they watch the show on Tuesday?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's all good to see your faces again now. And you can find me at Miss GoElectric on pretty much every social media outlet. I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram, and so that's all just one word, at Miss GoElectric. But I also have my YouTube, so you can subscribe at youtube.com/Miss GoElectric. And then the show, Charge Across America, is going to be premiering on NBC Sports on December 21st at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. One thing I don't think I mentioned was that there's a $10,000 grand prize for the winner. So that was important. So see who wins that prize coming up here on Tuesday.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laycee.
Yeah,
thanks
thank
for
you
being
guys
on.
for having me. I
Thanks
appreciate
everybody
it.
for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.